Hey guys, thanks for your work on Monday and Tuesday. Hope things are well. Um, Thanks to those of you who've gotten your homework in for Monday and Tuesday. Some of you are still missing Monday and Tuesday. Please don't get behind. We've got a lot of we did 4 classes in total, 4 classes this week. We don't want to get too far behind. This is really important material. So try to make sure that you're on top of things. Thank you to those that send me questions and stuff. I'm actually going to start off with answering one of those questions. Haley originally sent me some stuff, but I also noticed in a couple of your graphs that actually I need to share my screen before you can see what I'm doing. Share. There we are. Okay, so this question, so discuss why a country would use a carbon tax to address the negative externality of production. Please utilize a graph to answer. So most of your written responses were correct, so I won't really go into that, but some of your graphing was wrong. So let's see if this will work, and you can actually see what I'm doing. So you might have to pause. I don't know how. Let me get you a little closer. We'll go like that. So I'll let you kind of look at that real quick and pause it if you need to, and then I'll talk about it. Okay. So the basic idea here is that you've got a negative externality of production graph, and then we're adding, it says here, actually, let me not, hold on, sorry. This is stupid. Let's do this. There we go. That's better. Okay, there we go. So you can see this. This is where we are. Okay, so you've got a regular negative externality graph here. And then we've shifted the marginal private cost line this way by adding in a tax. So you're taking a picture of me. My girlfriend's taking a picture of me because I probably look like an idiot doing this. But yeah, so we've shifted the marginal private cost line closer to the marginal social cost line. And as a result of doing that, we've shrunken the deadweight loss. So the deadweight loss used to be, if you can kind of see it, used to be at Q1. It's actually a triangle at Q1, P1 here. So it used to be this whole triangle up here. But as a result of shifting the marginal private cost line, it's actually here at the P2 now. So you can see that the red shading. So the deadweight loss has shrunken as a result of the carbon tax. So we haven't gotten rid of the externality, but what we've done is we've shrunken it. So we've shrunken the deadweight loss to a smaller amount. And you can never really what's called internalize a externality because it's so hard to actually measure it, like we saw in the article about plastic bags. But what you can do is you can try to shrink that deadweight loss as much as possible. So that's what you should have drawn on that part 2. If you did not draw that, or you still haven't submitted it to me, you need to resubmit it with the correct drawing on it. Hopefully that makes sense. So we finished the production, the negative externality of production and the positive externality of production. So now we're going to move on to negative externalities of consumption. This is probably the most common one that we talk about. Negative externality of production means that there is a gap between, you can see here, there's a gap between the marginal social benefit and the marginal private benefit. And this gap is resulting in welfare loss. This means that the private people are the private consumption is resulting in a loss to social utility. So it says private utility is diminished by negative utility suffered by third party. So society is losing out because of the actions of private individuals. So the best example of this is smoking. So you are, as a private individual, you are paying for the cost of smoking, right? You're paying for that through paying for the cigarettes, right? And also maybe paying for your healthcare. But society is also losing beyond that, right? There's extra cost to healthcare that society pays for because healthcare is free in a lot of places. Or as well, people around you are negatively impacted because of smoking. So because I'm smoking, you're paying the price sitting next to me, and you aren't getting money for that. I don't give you money because I sit next to you and smoke. And you're not getting anything because of that. You're just losing. So there's a cost to society that needs to be considered with cigarettes. And if that's not the case, then there will be a situation in which the marginal private cost is greater than the marginal social cost. This is actually wrong. Marginal private cost is greater than marginal social cost, which creates a market or a welfare loss. So our goal here is to shrink this welfare loss right here. And some of you might be doing IAs on this. This is a very, very common question to see on paper ones. So there's actually two solutions to this problem. Well, two major ones that we'll talk about. So I'm going to move on to the next slide. If you need to stop it and pause and look at this, pause it now. If not, I'm going to move on. Also, feel free to write any comments down below. I will answer what I can, or you can email me them as well. Okay, so solutions. There are two potential solutions that we're going to talk about. One is taxation of cigarettes. So if the government decides to tax the cigarettes, you can see it here, right? That a tax is always on the supply line, in this case, the marginal social cost line, and it's shifting the marginal social cost line up, which is dropping the quantity consumed. So we were consuming here, and society was demanding us to consume here. We were consuming here, and now what's happened was the tax has shifted the marginal social cost line up, which is dropped quantity down, and there's a higher price as a result of that taxation. As well, what can happen is once you tax something, the government is receiving revenue. Governments generate a lot of revenue, as it says here. Governments generate a lot of revenue through taxing cigarettes and alcohol and lots of other negative items. Like anything that's a demerit good, the government taxes it, they generate revenue from that. And then what you do with that revenue is you then use it to decrease consumption even further. So in this case, you would tax as solution one, And then as solution 2, you would then maybe potentially negative advertisement on cigarettes or education on the negative effects of cigarette smoking. And that would then shift the demand line, because if you negatively advertise something, demand's going to go down. Therefore, it would decrease the marginal private benefit as well. So you tax, which changes the marginal social cost. Then you use that tax, it shifts the marginal private benefit. Make sure that when you're drawing this and you're talking about it, that you're clearly explaining what's happening, and that you're clearly labeling your shifts. You can't just shift both lines and leave it at that. You have to clearly explain what's happening. You can label it shift 1 and shift 2, or I don't know, the Q1s and Q2s, make sure they're labeled correctly, but you need to clearly explain the shifts so that whoever's reading your answer clearly understands what you're talking about. This is probably one of the most common questions that you see. So it's something that you need to make sure that you clearly understand. I will give you some practice work on this, but it's definitely something that you have to clearly understand, or you're gonna kind of be stuck a little bit. So hopefully you get negative externalities of consumption. What I ask you to do is make sure that you add it into that 4-square document that we made, or that we've been working on. And you're actually going to share that with me at the end of this video. So you'll actually send that. That'll be your kind of homework, will be for you to send that document to me. Yeah, that'll be your homework. So that's negative externality of consumption. I think of the 4, it's the most common to see, because it deals with taxation, which is something we already talked about in chapter 5. It's also a very, very common question on paper 2, yes, but also paper 3 for the HLs. The idea of mixing taxing and externality shows up a lot, so just make sure that you are comfortable with it. Okay, we're going to move on to the last type of externality, which is positive externality of consumption. So positive externality of consumption means that when you consume something, it's benefiting other people in society beyond the cost that is being paid. So if you really, the best way to think about this is through example. Healthcare is the best example. The more people that consume healthcare, the better society is. So it's in society's interest to get as many people to consume healthcare as possible. If there are healthier people around you, you're more likely to be healthy. So it's society's interest to make sure as many healthy people are out there as possible. That's why governments mandate vaccines. That's why governments provide free healthcare or cheaper healthcare. It's because it's a benefit to society to provide this. So if you're looking at this graph, private individuals without a subsidy are going to consume healthcare at Q1 at a price of P1, but society is demanding us to consume it at a cost of Q, or at a quantity of Q1 and at a price of P, or sorry, at a quantity of Q star and at a price of P star. So there's this potential welfare gain where we could be benefiting more and consuming more at a higher, reaching a higher quantity, but because privately we're demanding at Q1, we're not able to reach that Q star. So we need to find a way to increase our consumption of healthcare to gain some of this welfare back. And that's what we're trying to do. Education is healthcare is the example we're using, but education is also another good example. The more education that's consumed, the better society is. People don't like living with stupid people, so the more education there is, the better society is. That's why governments subsidize education as much as they do. A lot of countries, it's actually free. So yes, so we'll move on to solutions to this. If you need to look at this again to add it into your chart, feel free to pause it and go from there. Okay, so solutions. Obviously, governments want to increase the consumption of this, right? Because it's a positive benefit, governments want to increase it. So there's a couple different options. Governments could subsidize healthcare. They could subsidize every healthcare, just make it cheaper in general, or they could subsidize individuals. So they could subsidize women or children or older people or poor people. There's lots of different options, but they can subsidize. And a subsidy is going to impact the supply line like a tax, and it's going to shift it to the right. So it's going to make things cheaper and the quantity is going to go up. The other potential option, depending on why people aren't consuming it, is there could be education done or advertisement done. So putting money towards making people aware that they should be consuming healthcare could result in shifting the private benefit line, as you see here, to the right. So these are two potential options. Usually governments will take a little bit of both, because you don't want to be subsidizing someone who can afford to do it. And the problem with subsidies is that it's sometimes difficult to tell why you might be subsidizing someone who you don't need to subsidize. And therefore there's an opportunity cost associated with that. So you don't want to subsidize people that can afford something and they're just choosing not to, or they don't know about it. So that's where that advertisement might come in. So a little bit of both maybe. But again, it's up to you to talk about why you've chosen the solution that you've chosen. So if you're talking about positive externalities, you need to talk about why you've chosen the route you've chosen. If you choose the route of subsidizing and you shift the marginal social cost line, great. Explain to me why you've chosen it. If you choose positive advertisement and you shift the marginal private benefit line to the right, great. Why have you chosen to do it? Or if you do both, why? It doesn't really matter your solution as long as you've explained why you've chosen what you've done it, and you explain why you've chosen not to do something else. So the explanation of why you did it and is just as important as why you didn't do something else. So make sure that you are fully explaining that in your solution, which would most likely be part B of paper 1 or in your IA if you choose to do a question like this on your IA. Okay, I think I'm going to stop there. I don't actually have a timer on me, but I'm going to stop there. We've actually finished the 4 different types of externalities. So we did negative externality of production, this one. We did positive externality of production, which is this one. We've done negative externality of consumption. We talked about cigarettes. And then we finished it off with positive externality of consumption. We talked about healthcare. So make sure you have your 4 quadrants. You filled them all out with a definition, an example, an explanation, and a diagram. Make sure you have all those 4 things. Make sure it looks nice. And once you are done, your homework for today is going to be for you to post that. Okay. So what we'll do is tomorrow for Friday's video, we will potentially, I don't know, I'll have to think about what I want to do for Friday. I might give you some time on your IA and not have a video. I will let you know when I decide that. So, okay, I will stop here. I'll stop sharing my screen. If you need anything, please let me know. Please shoot me an email, send me a WeChat in the group. Feel free to leave any comments you would like. And thank you. Have a good day. Hope you guys are staying healthy.